Now looking at lesson 16A, which is titled Education Pays. The graph to the right shows data from a study conducted by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the same thoughts apply. Go ahead and hit pause, look at question 1 and maybe more by yourself before walking through this presentation with me. So looking at the graph, it shows data from a study conducted by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. And before we go any further, we should take a moment and just look at the graph. It is talking about employment. It is talking about employment of people these ages and by their education and these years. So just to verify, there's one of the years. Here is another one of the years. And this dark blue is a bachelor's, the green is some college or an associate, the red is high school, graduates with no college, and then the light blue is less than high school. So it asks us in question 1 to figure out the story that this graph is telling, because that's what a graph does. It's a picture of your information. And a good first step is to break down the graph into different pieces. So it says on part A, identify and state what each axis measures. That's too funny. So down here on our x-axis, it's telling us the years. We have a 97 and a 2007. Vertically, the y-axis over here is giving us percentages. Note it's going from 0 to 100. So that's going to mean that this amount plus this amount plus this amount plus this amount should add up to be 100% to represent the employees or employment distribution ages 25 to 64 for 1997. Part B, what do the different colors represent? Well, it is what you see off on the side. Part C, what population is represented in the graph? Is it all persons or all workers? And it's not all the people, it's all the workers. Our objectives for this lesson include that we're going to begin to understand that a stacked column chart can display relative frequency data for different categories or over different time periods. We're going to begin to be able to determine information from that stacked column graph. We're going to be able to analyze data in a stacked column graph, and we'll be able to write a brief summary on the information. So moving on to question 2, if you haven't already done this by yourself, hit pause and go ahead and work on it by yourself. Sometimes the media does a good job of including all the information necessary to analyze a graph. In fact, if you have access to the internet, you can find the actual data for this report on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. However, you often have to estimate data from a graph, such as the one that we just looked at. So part A, recreate the table below in your notes and complete the table by using the graph in question 1 to estimate the percentage of workers with educational background, with each educational background in 1997 and in 2007. And then also determine the absolute change in each educational background between these in 97 and 2007. And we're going to leave them as percentages. We're not calculating percentage. We'll just be subtracting one from the other. So it would be good, I don't think you have to replicate this, just write on here, and you don't think you need to replicate it in your notes, just write your information here. But I'm going to need to bounce back and forth. I'm going to go back to the stacked column graph. You're looking at this page and the graph, and we're going to start by completing all of the numbers for 97. We're going to get a number for bachelor's, a number for some college, high school, and less than high school. And when we get done, it better be 100% in both of these columns. But right now, we're just starting with 1997. I'm going to start at the bottom, and these are going to be approximations, but we'll do the best that we can on our approximations. And looking down here, it looks like if these are going by 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, uh-oh, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, huh? So if 20's here and 10 is there, then we better say that this blue ends at about 10. So 10 minus 0 puts us at about 10% on this one. So go complete your chart, and for less than a high school diploma, put about 10%. You might want to write it in pencil, because if these don't add up to be 100%, we're going to have to adjust something. So then looking at this next one, it looks like it's going to about 42%. And if we're saying this one was at 10%, when we subtract these two, we're getting about, oh, I don't have to write it down here. The whole thing is about 32%. If that's at 42, and if we put this one at, let's just put it at 70 to keep it simple. And if we subtract 70 minus 42, that gets us about 28% for some college in 1997. And if we do have that at 70, then that would leave 100 minus 70 to get us at 30. Let's see if it's 8, 50, 60, 70, 80. We've got us 100% people, so we're going with it. So make sure you have these in your chart that we were just looking at. And I'm going to keep going on this page. I'm going to go back down here to the bottom. And it looks like it's a little less than where we were. Call it 8 or 9. Let's go ahead and call it 9. And again, 9 minus 0 here. I'm getting 9%, and make sure I'm writing in pencil because we've got to add up to 100. So when we're looking right here, this is looking about, I don't know, 38-ish, 39-ish, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm going to call it 38. Let's try 38%. And if it is 38%, 38% minus this 9, I believe, is putting us at about 27. Bad choice of colors here. No, not 27. It's going to put us at about 29%. When we look at this next one, that's cutting off at about maybe 66%. And if it is 66% minus this 38%, let's see, 2, 6, what is that? Putting us at about 28%. And if we are at 66%, then that's going to put us at 34% when we subtract down from 100. And so adding these up, we've got 57. So if that's 57% plus 43%, looks like we have us 100. So we're going with it. So put these numbers on your chart, and then they're asking us to do absolute change in these percentages, and then to write a brief summary about what we're noticing in the data. So I'm going to get my chart caught up, and I'll meet you over at part B. Go ahead and write down some comments about what you see for part B, and then even go ahead and make comment about parts C and D. So I've completed the chart with the information that we just got off of our stacked column graph, and they're asking us to calculate absolute change. And one way we've remembered absolute change is ending number minus beginning number. So if I take my ending number and subtract my beginning number, 34 minus 30 is a positive 4%. 28 minus 28 is 0%. 29 minus 32 is a negative 3%. And 9 minus 10 is a negative 1%. So a short summary could be that anything. When you go to write a summary, you can look at information in a column and talk about it. Information in another column, you can look comparing this way. You can compare with groups. Like if you wanted to group up this middle column, that's over 50%. Over 50% in both of these. You can slice and dice it however you want to. I will read you some stuff that our curriculum has suggested, and I would write any of these down or leave what you have written down alone. In 1997, approximately 10% of the workers had less than a high school diploma. About 32% were high school graduates with no college, about 28% had some college, and about 30% had a bachelor's or higher. So you can report out what you're seeing. The sum of the percentages is 100 because it represents all of the workers aged 25 to 64 in 1997. It's difficult to be exact using this information, but we've got a good idea using the approximates. And so then it lists what's going on in 2007. And we can say that again, we can list what is there, or we can have a comment about how it's gone up or how it's gone down. You could say in 2007, those with bachelor's degree went up 4 percentage points. Those that had some college remained the same. There was no change. You could say the amount of high school graduates went down, as well as those with less than a high school diploma, and it can be accounted for here in students, members of our society, getting a bachelor's degree. You can mention any pieces and parts of these, but Part C says what level of education was most common in the workers aged 25 to 64 in 1997. And now that we've broken it apart, from 1997, the one that's most common are those that had high school, they were high school graduates, but they had no college. And so then Part D says, so what level of education was most common in 2007? And it's right here, the bachelor's degree or higher. Now they're going to ask us to look at the data in another way. The other way that they're going to ask us to look at this is to create another column. And when we create another column, they're going to ask us to look at relative change. And when we look at the relative change, it's going to put the absolute change in a different light, where we're going to take our ending minus beginning from here, ending minus beginning, and then go divide it by beginning. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll do one for you. I'm going to take this ending minus beginning, which is 4. I'm going to type in 4, not 4% or 0.04, and I'm going to take 4 and divide it by 30 because that's where we started. Now I'm going to multiply it by 100 to get it to percentage, and I'm getting that our relative change is, and I don't know if it says how much to round it to, so let's just go to tenths for the sake of space. And while I'm here, I might as well go ahead and do the rest of them. 0 divided by 28, there was no relative change. In this case, 3 divided by 32, I'm getting a 9.4% relative change, but it's actually a decrease. And then 1 divided by 10 is going to be a 10% decrease. Now that we have the relative change done for all of the levels of education, Part B asks us to identify the category that showed the largest change between 1997 and 2007. That category would be the bachelor's degree or higher. And it asks, what is the change? And whereas we had gone up 4 percentage points, in relative means, that's about 13%. The only comparable shift was the percentage of workers who were in the high school, they were high school graduates, where they had decreased. Here was just by 1%, but this is about 10% decrease, which is in the teens, just like that was positive, this one was negative. Part C, what percentage of the workforce in 1997 had no education at the college level? And then how did that compare to the percentage of the workforce in 2007 with no college level? And so in 1997, it says what percentage in 90 had no education at the college level? Well, no education at the college level, let me change colors. No education at the college level, no college, and less than a high school diploma, those together are about 42%. And the question says, how did that compare to the percentage in 2007 with no college level? And so here we are at, with those two together, we're at about 38%. And so there's a decrease. We're going from 42% down to 38%, and you even notice that that's reflected in the absolute and relative changes. So now looking at question 4, and again, if you have not hit pause, it is time to do so and answer 4 and 5 by yourself. And then when you come back and listen to 4, what you write and what I mentioned could be similar or not. Choose to add to it or to keep with what you have already written. So in question 4, it says analyze the graph and the table of values and write a summary about how the educational composition of the workforce changed. And something to focus on is even a shift right here, where high school, no college was higher than bachelor's degree in 97, but by the time we get 10 years later, it's switched, where now you have more with a bachelor's degree than those with high school graduates and no college. In only 10 years, it's shifted, where one was like, this one's almost a third, and this one's right at 30, and then it's switched to this one's over a third, and this one's less than 30. There is change happening, and these are a workforce where it appears more of the workforce degrees, or more of the people in the workforce have more bachelor's degrees and less just a high school graduate with no college. Something that you could note, but many other things that you could write down. So pick something to write down and write it down. Question 5, did you find the stacked column graph easy to analyze? Write down an honest answer, and then create another graphical display that illustrates the same information. So definitely write down your honest answers on what you think about the stacked column graph, because it is interesting, it's colorful, it provides a lot of quick information and comparisons. But here is another way that we could take the same information and put it in another graph. So instead of stacking the bars are side by side and being compared just right in front of your eyes. Oh, and this one's, oh, now I know why. And so looking right here, the 1997, it's this column or bar, and then the 2007s are this bar. And so it's just a different way to show the data, and it's going to depend on what kind of presentation you're trying to make, what kind of comparisons, what you want to be obvious or to stick out. But right here was the last thing that we talked about on question 4, where you were around 32% here and it dropped to about 29. And then you were about 30 here and you went up to 34%. And so it's all still the same information. It's just the presentation's different. So when you go to create graphs for your presentations or homework or something you might use in your work, consider how you want to display the information and what you want to be highlighted. This completes lesson 16A. You know the drill. Go look at your syllabus. If there are more things to do, go do them. If there are not, celebrate, and I'll see you on another video.